I'm Jacob Seelman.
And I'm Tom Baker.
You're listening to Speed77 Radio,
powered by Race Chaser Online.
We are your home for motorsports.
Take two. Good evening, race fans, and welcome to Speed77 Radio, powered by Race Chaser Online. I'm Jacob Seelman, and we're glad you're along for the ride here tonight on the Madness. It is going to be a wild ride. We talk everything from NASCAR to IndyCar to dirt, pavement, sprint cars, you name it. We've got it tonight. It's a super modified centric edition of the Madness, but certainly a lot going on from around the world of motorsports here tonight. Want to welcome my colleagues to the round table, Tom Baker and Kyle Souza. Tom, I'll start with you because I don't remember a weekend in motorsports where we've had this much to talk about in a long, long time, and I'm ready to get it started.
Well, the funny part of it is there was actually less racing this past weekend going on, I think, to a degree. Not all of the northern tracks have opened it up yet, and of course you're coming off the Easter weekend, so there were still some divisions who were dark and not in competition, so less became more, so to speak. There was enough action just on Saturday night at Richmond, let alone to start talking about yesterday at Birmingham with the IndyCar Series, and of course several of the short track series in action as well. We've got all of that to talk about, fights and all kinds of different things, crazy pit strategies. I mean, just a plethora of different ways we can go with the show, and a couple of very good guests as well that are going to talk Oswego Speedway as we get a little further along with the program. So yeah, it should be fun. And Kyle, I know you had a big race up north at Stafford that was going on as well, and a lot of stuff happening up in the New England area as the tracks start to kind of unpack for the season up there.
Well, guys, good evening. Glad to be back around the round table tonight for the Madness. And Tom, you said it right. We're heating up here, and I am very, very excited. If you can't tell by the tone of my voice, I am. And we are ready. This coming weekend, I'm excited for my home track to get things kicked off. Seacock Speedway opening their 69th season of action, being joined this year by the Valenti Modified Racing Series in the Spring Dash 100. We had the Sizzler this past weekend at Stafford, one of the long-time events up here in New England, the 43rd annual Napa Spring Sizzler that went on this past weekend. We'll dive into that a little bit. They had a great SK Modified feature that went along with that. We had boxing rings in the Sprint Cup Series at Richmond, and we had a wet IndyCar weekend. We're going to have a fun time here tonight in the Madness, Jacob.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. This is going to be really, really fun. And let's get it started because, Tom, some of that excitement came from NASCAR. And it's been rare up until this season that I would get to say that and that I would feel like it was so necessary to say that. But I have a very impassioned plea for Ryan France, Mike Helton, and all the staff up there in the corporate offices in Daytona Beach. Because NASCAR this season has delivered like it's not delivered in a long time. So to all the corporate heads up there in Daytona Beach in your comfy little air-conditioned offices, whatever you did to make it this good, please, please don't change anything. This weekend was freaking-tastic. Saturday night at Richmond was one of the best races I've seen in years. You had everything. Lead changes, fireballs, 2 wide, beating and banging almost 4 wide there at the end of the race. You had 5 cars under a blanket, almost neck and neck going up into the wall. And Tom, you know how I know it was so amazing? Joey Logano did something he's never done in his Sprint Cup career. He won a second race.
Yeah, and he came from 5th at the latter portions of the race there to do it. But of course, Joey, now he ran good the whole race, but he had a little bit of help too from in front of him, because I got to tell you, Matt Kenseth made that car way too wide to fit on the template in post-race tech in the last closing moments. He was doing everything he could to win that race, and that car got about 4 grooves wide. And I got to tell you, he killed Jeff Gordon's chance to win, and I was surprised, honestly, that Jeff didn't just do his best to dump him when it got down to it, because I mean, the old Jeff Gordon, I think, would have probably tried a little harder to win that race than what he did. But, you know, that was a fun race to watch. And you had Brad Keselowski in the middle of it and Kyle Busch. And then, of course, Joey Logano just took advantage of every open space that he could find in the last few laps of that to get the win. Really happy for Joey and for Todd Gordon and the Pennzoil crew. You know, that's a team right there that's just getting better and better as the two of them work together, Joey and Todd. And I think they're beginning to establish themselves as a team that nobody can sort of dismiss anymore. You know, people want to say that Joey's a flash of the pan, or, you know, they don't want to put him up there with the top drivers in Sprint Cup right now. I got news for you. There aren't too many drivers doing a better job inside the car right now than Joey Logano, and he's going to be a factor in the chase all the way through, I believe. And it's starting to look like that number 22 is probably going to win a couple of more before we're done.
That's bold. Joey Logano being a factor all the way through the chase. You know what? I won't discount that prediction, because I would like to see it happen, and honestly, I'd pay some pretty good money to see that kind of show in the chase. Logano getting his 2nd win of the season, his 5th career NASCAR Sprint Cup Series triumph in a huge way. Coincidence, Kyle? I think not. For the 2nd time this season, Joey Logano wins a race, and Jeff Gordon finishes 2nd. Logano beating the best of the best to make it happen.
Well, Jacob, I think I'm going to have to go with Tom on this one. That 22 has been stout, and it's been one of the 4, he's probably been one of the 4 or 5 strong suits this year. You got Kevin Harvick that's been in the front, Dale Earnhardt Jr., Jeff Gordon, and Logano. Those have been the 4 top competitors. Each and every week, they've had the cars that can run in the top 5. There's been a couple others that have spit through, like Brad Keselowski and Matt Kenseth, but those guys have been the top of the crop right now. Logano basically put himself in the right position at the right time, and when Matt Kenseth and Brad Keselowski had a short track shootout, Jeff Gordon couldn't get through, and Logano drove to victory lane on Saturday night in what was one of the more thrilling Richmond races I think we've seen in the past couple of seasons.
Yeah, thrilling, no doubt. And Tom, I know something else that was thrilling, and that was all the tempers that were flaring afterwards. You had Brad Keselowski mad at Matt Kenseth for making his car about 3 lanes wide. I thought Kyle Busch was the only one that knew how to do that. I guess Kenseth has taken a few lessons from his teammate. You had Kyle Busch, who was, and I quote, driving his car like a mofo at the end of that one. Busch coming from 16th to 3rd in the closing laps on fresh tires. Had he had about 3 more, I think he would have made Joey Logano's life really, really interesting. And then you had the little situation that we had on pit road after the end of that race where, boy, the fans went to the racetrack to see a race, and an MMA fight broke out or something like that.
Well, I don't know about an MMA fight. It was certainly an interesting boxing match. I think if Marcus Ambrose ever got serious about a second career, I would think that Don King might consider taking him on as a future boxer, because that was a I got to tell you, that was a pretty doggone good right cross right there.
Oh, yeah, and we saw the pictures of it afterwards, too. Boy, he boogered up Casey Mears' face right good.
He really did. You know, and of course, everybody's going to have their own opinion on it. Personally, I don't like fighting. I don't think it's really necessary. But look, I mean, we don't know what was said. We don't know all that went on. All I know is what we saw on the video. And, you know, whatever was going on or whatever was being said, Casey Mears grabbed Marcus Ambrose and was trying to physically move him or push him off to the side to have a conversation or whatever, and Marcos just wanted no part of that. And I think Casey could have probably handled himself a little better initially in that situation, it appeared, and Marcos pretty much told him so. Marcos boomeranged him is what he did, and you know, somebody said that Marcos got hit by someone else after that. I didn't see that video, so I can't substantiate that, but that's what the story was. So, yeah, I guess if for all those NASCAR fans who were still complaining that the sport was too boring, well, if you watch that race Saturday night and everything that happened after and you still find it boring, then you probably ought to go watch MMA.
Yeah, I don't know how you can find it boring after that one. It was unbelievable, and boy, all I got to say now is Kansas Speedway, try to top that. I don't know how they're going to do it. I mean, they are under the lights. That does help a little bit, but boy, they're going to have about a 6-star effort to top what we've seen in Richmond over the course of Friday and Saturday, and we'll get to all the nationwide stuff in just a few minutes because
Jake,
there's
don't
more.
We go to Talladega first before we go to Kansas?
Oh, yeah, I guess that's right. There's this little thing called Talladega this weekend. Yeah, you know what? Stop it. They've changed around this midsection of the schedules. Yeah, they've changed around this midsection of the schedule so much. I don't know which end is up. I'm still flustered by the fact that Marcus Ambrose landed a punch on Casey Mears. Are you kidding me? Just one of those. Yeah. So yeah, there's this little thing called Talladega in the middle. So you know what? I'll back it down to 5 stars because Talladega. A year ago, we saw David Reagan go to Victory Lane. If we have another one of those, I will give it 5 stars. Let's just leave it at that. But right now, with all that, we're going to put a couple of the screws that might have come loose in our heads back in while we take this caution flag. And when we come back, we'll talk NASCAR Nationwide Series and some New England stuff with Kyle. That's next on The Madness. You are listening to Speed77 Radio and Race Chaser Online. Stay with us. The Madness rolls on when we come back.
For 17 years, Stock Car Steel has been a leading materials supplier to the racing industry. We're proud they're a Motorsports content partner here at Race Chaser Online. The biggest names in NASCAR trust Stock Car Steel for raw materials such as carbon steel, chrome moly, DOM, aluminum, plastics, and much more. You can't build a race car without the basic materials, and Stock Car Steel is the place to get them. Don't forget to also visit Stock Car Steel's sister company, SRI Supplies, for racing and industry. SRI is the place to go for all your shop supply needs. Nuts, bolts, rivets, tapes, adhesives, cutting tools, chemicals, body shop supplies, paint shop supplies, lubricants, and more. A well-stocked race shop is a winning race shop, and the path to winning begins with 3 letters, SRI. For more information, visit stockcarsteel.com or SRI-supplies.com. Check them both out on Facebook or call them toll-free at 1-888-752-7272, 1-888-752-7272.
I'm Jacob Seelman.
And I'm Tom Baker,
You're listening to Speed77 Radio.
powered by Race Chaser Online.
We are your home for motorsports.
So we're back here on The Madness, and I've put in a couple of the screws that apparently I was missing before the break, and we'll get right back at it. Talladega comes before Kansas. I've learned how to read my calendar there, Tom. And before we get to Talladega, we got to get through Richmond and NASCAR Nationwide Series Friday night. While it didn't have the boxing match, it did have a fair bit of intriguing storylines. Chase Elliott going for 3 in a row, Junior Motorsports being on a roll. And when you talk about Junior Motorsports being on a roll, they just continued their roll all the way to victory lane again. This time, it was Kevin Harvick going victory lane at RIR. I guess he's a little bit good at Richmond, wouldn't you say?
Well, that was, to be honest with you, as much as I thought Saturday night was a 5-star for being exciting, Friday night was about a 2.5-star for being boring. And it wasn't because it couldn't have been a good race. It was because Kevin Harvick was just so doggone fast. That car was just gone. I mean, there was nobody going to touch that car. Chase Elliott tried, and I have to give young Chase a lot of credit because after the race was over, they mentioned that he had told his crew at the end, he apologized to the crew, and for the fact that he felt that he let Kevin Harvick outdrive him. And I'm thinking to myself, you're a rookie, and Kevin Harvick's been around for what, 12 or 13 years now? I don't think anyone's expecting you to outdrive Happy Harvick, but excuse me, he felt like his car was just as good. It is what it is. Chase is going to win more races before this year's up. But Kevin Harvick was just dominant, and really Junior Motorsports showed their strength because until Regan Smith ended up in the middle of a situation that he did not cause and ended up getting spun out because of it, he was right in contention too. And I don't know that he would have had anything for Harvick, and I would debate whether perhaps he might even have been able to pass Chase Elliott. But certainly I think he'd have been in the top 5, and Junior Motorsports would have had 3 in the top 5 again. And boy, I'll tell you what, Kyle Souza, Junior Motorsports has really established itself, I think, as the team to beat in Nationwide this year. And, I think we all expected that at some point that 54 Joe Gibbs car was going to come back to the field, so to speak. But I'm not sure we expected it to happen in this manner with Junior Motorsports or any other team for that matter just totally taking over the division, and that's pretty much what's happened here lately.
Well, Tom, it's starting to look similar to me what Joe Gibbs Racing was able to do, not only this past season, back in 2013, but over the last couple of seasons. When the 18, the 20, and the 54, well, at that time it was the 18 with Kyle behind it, but they just seemed to be able to dominate everywhere they went and have the 2 or 3 best cars. And Junior Motorsports has come a long way, Tom, from back in those days when they had Brad Keselowski in the Navy, the white and blue 88, if fans can remember that. Junior and his team has done a great job putting things together, and it was absolute pure dominance by Kevin Harvick on Friday night. He had a couple of tire cording issues, and I think at one point Kevin even backed off to save his stuff, and Chase Elliott still couldn't get to him, but they were the class of the field. And Tom, you mentioned it, Regan got spun out, but you take a look at the final results, he was still in the top 10, and he and Elliott Sadler were coming to the field unbelievably fast. So Jacob, this Junior Motorsports crowd they've got their act together right now. And Kyle Busch, he looked a little bit slower than normal this past Friday night.
Kyle Busch slow? Say what? I've been waiting for that for the last 6 years. Oh, boy, it's a refreshing change. That's what it is, to not see Kyle Busch dominating every Nationwide race. And that's not for any lack of respect for Kyle Busch that I might have. I respect Kyle's driving ability tremendously. There just came a point when I got too darn tired of seeing him win every week, and I'm thrilled that there are other people winning this year. Yeah, Kyle got one, and it was on a day when he darn well should have. In Phoenix, he was the class of the field, but he's not been the class of the field every race this year like he has in the past, and I love that. Kyle, you were also mentioning some tire cording issues. You and Tom both were. And Tom, I want to go back to those tires for a minute before we get to a couple of New England bits with Kyle. Those tire cording issues caused some issues Saturday night in the form of crash, boom, burn.
Yeah. When's the last time you saw that much fire in a cup race? Multiple cars. I mean, and that's exactly what was happening. Apparently the tires were cording up, and the rubber from the tires, the strings, so to speak, of rubber from the tires was getting on the brakes and the rest of the front end components, which obviously are very hot, and just causing the car to catch fire. And boy, there were some nasty situations. Reed Sorensen, gosh, I don't even remember them all. I think Cole Witt in the 26 had an issue. Stenhouse had an issue. I think even Boyer a little bit, if I remember right, had an issue with that. It just crazy what was going on there with that, and not really too sure exactly why that was happening. I mean, normally the Goodyear tires don't do that, so I'm not sure if it was just the compound that they brought to the track. Maybe they need to do some more work on it, or if they were running longer green flag segments than they envisioned. I'm really not sure what was going on, but that was nasty.
Yeah, it was, and definitely Clint Boyer's fire was one of the worst I've seen. His and Reed Sorensen's. I thought maybe that 36 car was going to be a pile of ashes by the time they finally got the fire out on that one. So definitely some interesting moments. I'd be looking to Goodyear to see what they can do to rectify that situation for the next time out. Not so much worried about tire wear at Talladega, but Kansas definitely going to be one to keep an eye on when we get there in a couple of weeks. Kyle, I want to turn to you now. Because some other racing action going on over this weekend in the NASCAR family of series, and you mentioned it at the top of the show, the Stafford Spring Sizzler in action over the weekend, and I would like to personally say that Stafford needs to create some sort of a king's crown, give Bobby Santos a scepter and a cape, and do like they do at Eldora for the King's Royal in July and coronate him, because if he's not the king of Stafford yet, he's certainly the king of the Spring Sizzler.
Well, Jacob, that's saying it in an understatement, I think. Santos has the domination of the Sizzler just down. He's got it down pat. I don't know anybody that can go to the Sizzler thinking or even trying to beat Bobby Santos. Quick race recap, fans. If you missed the Sizzler, it began yesterday afternoon in the midst of the raindrops at Stafford Speedway. The CarQuest losing their title sponsorship over the offseason. So Napa Auto Parts taking on the Spring Sizzler name for 2014. And the raindrops really fell from Friday afternoon through Saturday and through Sunday. Somehow they managed to get the racing in the windows, and a fantastic effort by the Stafford Motor Speedway crew to drive the track. Quick recap of the race. It was young Tommy Barrett with his first career pole in what was his fourth career start that led the field to the green flag on Sunday afternoon. He was on the outside with Woody Pitcat, and Woody took the lead early on, but he and Justin Bonsignor, two of the drivers that had the spec motors underneath the hood after the long controversy last year after New Hampshire. Well, those are the two guys, the dominant guys at least, that had a spec motor that could only make it 175 of the 200 scheduled distance on Sunoco race fuel. So they came down pit road just past the midway point of the event, fueled up, and after that, it was a thrilling battle. Shout out to Jimmy Zacharias. Jacob, I know me and you talked about him. Maybe that wasn't the right decision at different points, possibly going with him behind the wheel of number 3. But yesterday, Jimmy had a subpar finish back in the low teens due to an accident that he didn't even cause when Donnie Leah spun in front of him. But Zacharias ran in the lower part of the top 5 for much of the Sizzler yesterday afternoon. When it all came down to it, Bobby Santos started 5th on a restart with 57 laps to go. He used the outside lane to the point and hung off a strong charge from Doug Coby in car number 2, in which Coby was side by side with him, coming to the checkered flag off turn number 4. Jacob, a strong run for Zacharias, but a shout out to Santos. He's got Stafford dominated.
Yes. 3 of the last 4 Spring Sizzlers and 6 of his 11 career wins overall have come at the Stafford Motor Speedway. Bobby Santos has got it going on at the half-mile racetrack in Connecticut, Kyle. I'm very, very much impressed. We're working on trying to get him for our Thursday night Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports show, hoping we can have that sewn up before Thursday night. I would love to hear from Bobby about his run and his prospects for going forward. Definitely going to be fun to listen to him and hear from him. We're working on that. And, you were talking about Jimmy Zacharias in that Bowler number 3 car, Kyle. I doubted whether this was going to be a good decision in the long run, and if nothing else, he really did have a solid day at Stafford. I have to admit, it wasn't a 5-star run, but it was a solid run, and definitely one where Jay-Z can get on his proverbial footing, so to speak, and try to build on for the next couple of tour races.
Yeah, Tom, I'll throw it to you on this one. I know you're fond of Jimmy when he ran a couple of races down there with the mods. Jimmy's a great driver. Maybe it's the wrong placement for him at this point, but he had a strong run yesterday, and I can't bash him. He was up in the front in the top 3 at one point and got in an incident with Donnie Leah where Leah spun out coming to the green flag on a restart, and Jimmy had nowhere to go but into him. They were about 7th at that point. Tom, Jimmy actually looks strong in that 3, and I'm interested to see what he can do with it when we get to a track like New Hampshire. This tour is a little bit on the money side, and this number 3 team seems to have the cash and the flow that's going to get them through the season full time. Have they picked the right driver, Tom?
Oh, I think Jimmy's an outstanding driver, and I don't see why it couldn't be a good pairing. Just about everybody that's been in that car has had reasonable success with it, some obviously more than others, and some have driven it longer than others. But I think Jimmy Zacharias, I think it's nice to see somebody like Jimmy Z getting an opportunity like this instead of the typical, as they used to say about NASCAR Cup back in the 70s, early 80s, retread drivers, just kind of recycling the veterans around. I think it's nice to see him get an opportunity. I was very surprised because certainly you wouldn't necessarily expect that he would be the first choice, but for no other reason than just because he's really not a New Englander. So you kind of, but no, the Zacharias family's been around modified racing for more years than I've probably been alive, and I think it's great to see him getting an opportunity in the car, and I think he's going to do really well with it. He's very aggressive. He's very, he's a talented racer. I mean, that whole family has had a lot of success in racing it, in modifieds particularly, and even some in late model cars. But I think Jimmy would be a perfect choice for the 3 right now, and I'm really looking forward to see what he can do with it.
Jimmy's going to be strong, I think, when we get to these shorter tracks, such as Stafford. The tour heads back to Stafford in a couple of weeks. That's their next event. This one, of course, under the lights on the Friday night racing, the Napa Auto Parts night at Stafford in a couple of weeks. It'll be interesting to see if Zacharias has got that machine up front. They have said, Jacob, that they will put that machine together, and they will be back at the next tour race in 2 weeks in Stafford Springs.
Sweet. That's good news to hear. I'm glad to see that bowler car on the tour once again, and it sounds like they are relying on Zacharias now for the full season. So that's a great opportunity for Jimmy Z, and glad to see him having a solid run over the weekend in the Sizzler. Kyle, I know there's a couple other New England races that were going on over the weekend. What else have you got?
The Valenti Modified Racing Series actually had this past weekend off. I'll get to what they're headed towards in a second, and unfortunately Mother Nature took control of New England this past weekend. Saturday having torrential rains throughout much of Connecticut, New Hampshire, and all in between. So most of the racing up here in the north getting canceled, including action at the Waterford Speed Bowl and the Monadnock Speedway, just to name 2. There were multiple others that also took the downfall of Mother Nature this past weekend. But if you didn't hear me earlier, I'm excited. Seacock Speedway opening its 69th season this weekend with a 2-day action. Saturday, open practice session for everybody that is going to be racing on Sunday. And then Sunday, we open it up. The 69th season of action kicks off with the Valenti Modified Racing Series.
See, there's my Valenti reference.
There we go, Jacob. They're in action. The Spring Dash 100 this coming Sunday afternoon, and I'm going to release it now. Nobody actually has it. Not many people have seen it yet. This is the schedule of events that is planned for Sunday afternoon. Qualifying heats promptly at 1 o'clock, with the late model starting it off, and then the Valenti Modified Racing Series for 3 qualifying heat events. The trucks, the street stocks, and the ARC Pro stocks to round out qualifying. That will be followed up by the Valenti Modified Racing Series consolation event. Into the features we go. The late models for 30 laps, the trucks for 25, the all-inclusive ARC Pro stocks open the season with a 40-lapper, the exciting street stocks for 25, and then the Valenti Modified Racing Series closes Sunday's program with a 100-lapper. This Valenti Series is starting to kick into action. They've picked up the pace up here in the Northeast, Jacob. They've got the dominant Tour, at least modified concern, other than the NASCAR wheel and modified Tour, and they are going to invade the Cement Palace, Tom, this Sunday afternoon. Tom, this Valenti Series is picking up, and what a better way for them to race number 3 of 2014 than at the Cement Palace.
Oh, I think, well, Seekonk's a great track for anything to race on, just about. I mean, it's so tight with the modifieds, and I think it's going to be that'll be a fun race for the VMRS series for sure. Jacob, that's definitely going to be exciting for the fans up there to see the Valenti series back at Seekonk.
Yeah, it will be. And with that, I'm going to proceed to go read a blackboard on how to keep my calendar straight as we go to this midway caution flag. We're about halfway through the first hour here tonight. When we come back, we have got the first of our remaining cast of characters here in the pipeline. Joel Sebastianelli going to join us to begin a jam-packed Open Wheel Central. We've got Barber, and we're actually kind of divesting Open Wheel Central into two parts tonight. We've got Joel's segment of Open Wheel Central, and then we've got Super Modified Mania, Tom, coming up in just a little while with Danny Kapasinski and Camden Proud. Both of those guests still to come here on The Madness, but next, it's all about IndyCar. Joel joins us right after this. For now, these words. We return to The Madness in just a moment. Stay with us.
Packers,
Vikings,
Red State,
Blue State.
We come from different places.
Uptown,
Downtown.
We come to different conclusions.
half empty,
Half full.
But no matter how different we are, we're all connected, and we can all make a difference. That's why United Way brings people, expertise, and resources together to improve the education, income, and health of our communities, the building blocks for a better life. When we live united, our efforts, magnified by others, add up to real change. Children succeed in school, families gain financial stability, the health of our neighbors improves, and suddenly, so do our communities. But real change won't happen without you.
Live united.
So let's look beyond our differences.
Live united.
One by one, let's make a difference. Let's reach out a hand to one and influence the condition of all.
Live united.
Give, advocate, volunteer. Live United. Sign up today at liveunited.org. Brought to you by United Way and the Ad Council.
For 17 years, Stock Car Steel has been a leading materials supplier to the racing industry. We're proud they're a Motorsports content partner here at Race Chaser Online. The biggest names in NASCAR trust Stock Car Steel for raw materials such as carbon steel, chrome moly, DOM, aluminum, plastics, and much more. You can't build a race car without the basic materials, and Stock Car Steel is the place to get them. Don't forget to also visit Stock Car Steel's sister company, SRI Supplies, for racing and industry. SRI is the place to go for all your shop supply needs. Nuts, bolts, rivets, tapes, adhesives, cutting tools, chemicals, body shop supplies, paint shop supplies, lubricants, and more. A well-stocked race shop is a winning race shop, and the path to winning begins with 3 letters, SRI. For more information, visit stockcarsteel.com or SRI-supplies.com. Check them both out on Facebook or call them toll-free at 1-888-752-7272, 1-888-752-7272.
Welcome back to The Madness here on Speed77 Radio and RaceChaserOnline.com. Jacob Seelman, Tom Baker, Kyle Souza, and our resident wine and cheeser now joining us here on The Madness. Glad to have him back live. Joel Sebastianelli with us, our resident Gator, fancy food expert, foreign extraordinaire, how many ever titles we can give him, you know, he appreciates that. Joel, welcome back to The Madness. I'm glad to have you back for some of the crazies. It's about time.
Always great to be on. No Formula One over the weekend, but once it finally got underway after a 3-hour rain delay, great IndyCar race from Barber Motorsports Park in Alabama. Full power. Not quite as dominant, finishing 5th, but Ryan Hunter-Ray and Andretti Autosport with Marco Andretti in tow, finishing 1 and 2. Great weekend for the IndyCar Series, and the month of May is almost here.
Yes, it is. Glad to have the month of May virtually on top of us. It is about time. I'm ready to talk about it, Joel. But first, before we can get there, I do want to wrap up Barber first because very, very intriguing race. Started on wets, went to slicks about halfway through the race, and granted, that was after about a 2.5 or so hour rain delay that turned it into a timed race, and we all know how much I hate timed races, but I digress on that. How about Ryan Hunter-Reay? Will Power, the only two-time Barber winner coming into the weekend, but he is going to have to divest his title because Hunter-Reay goes back-to-back in Alabama.
And it's a track that he wasn't particularly good at. Hadn't even finished inside the top 10 until last season when he finally broke through and won in 2013. So for Ryan Hunter-Reay, this is turning out to be one of his better tracks, actually. And with the second at St. Petersburg as well, we're seeing him very strong at the beginning of the year. Normally he picks things up right around Milwaukee and moves on through in the summer. But an uncharacteristically strong start. He's got to be one of the title favorites to challenge Will Power, now just 18 points behind Will in second place in the standings. The timed race was a bit of a necessity. I don't think anybody wanted to drop down to 100 minutes. The NHL TV window closing in at 7:30 and darkness closing in as well, there were only so many options if you wanted to get the race in that day, which is clearly what the IndyCar Series had to do. As far as the wet goes, personally, I love racing in the rain. Always adds a little bit of drama, a bit of an equalizer, takes out some of the equipment advantage. And we saw Sebastian Saavedra, even though he was on a different strategy, running up front for a while. Good to see him get up to the double-digit mark in laps led. But as far as the wet tires go, I think it's always interesting when these guys choose to go from the treaded tires to the slicks. Because as we saw here, it ended up costing Carlos Munoz and Juan Pablo Montoya what could have been a great race for both of them running up near the top 10. Montoya had plenty of great passes early on in the race, but eventually slid off into the gravel trap. And what we saw is that when one guy goes to slicks, everybody else goes. And I think that even though most drivers agreed that they had to do it because of what their competitors were doing, I don't think any of them really wanted to do it for at least another 5 or 10 laps because it cost those two. The track, particularly in the third sector of the track, was just way too wet to be running on slick tires at the time. But it just goes to show how great these guys are at controlling their car in the rain. Always a masterful display of driving, especially once there's such a small margin of error when you've got only that dry line, and anything outside of that you'll go around. A couple surprising performances, but I don't think anyone was really too shocked when up front the names you were hearing were Penske, Andretti, and even Ganassi with Scott Dixon running in third.
No, we shouldn't pretend to be surprised. And nice run for Scott Dixon. For once in his life, the runner-up curse, Joel, not applying to Scott Dixon, which honestly on this day I think he would have rather finished runner-up because not quite the day we're used to seeing from Scott Dixon in Barber.
Not particularly, although he's always very strong. The thing with Barber is it tends to lend itself well to your best drivers and your best teams, whereas other tracks there's a little bit more of a room for I don't necessarily know how to quantify this, but your top teams are always running up front. It's very much like Indianapolis Motor Speedway, where as far as road courses go, it's extremely difficult. There's a bunch of things that you need to master, and so if you're sort of in the middle of the field as a driver, that's going to show up here. It really exposes your strengths and it exposes your weaknesses. So as far as Scott Dixon, I mean, another top three, Ganassi is always great here. It's his teammate Tony Kanaan, who I think deserves a little bit of recognition because ninth place isn't necessarily a great finishing position for TK, especially at the beginning of the IndyCar Series run in Birmingham. He's always been so great here, but he did start last and worked his way all the way up through the field inside the top 10. That at least garners a little bit of recognition to me, and definitely got to respect him. And I think even though he's only got 62 points on the year and 2 top 10s with an ugly 18th at Long Beach, he's still not out of the title race yet, especially once we head to Indianapolis.
I don't think, first of all, let me jump in here and say I don't think Dixon did that much worse than he usually does at Barber. I think he's been second every other race they've run there, actually. So he was third, and you know what? I think Marco Andretti deserves a huge attaboy for driving the race without any radio communication. That has to be just terribly difficult, especially on a road course like that and under the conditions. So I thought that was, first of all, I would say that Marco gets an attaboy. But, Joel, I want to talk about Jack Hawksworth. What in the world has become of him? He is doing a good job in that number 98 car this year.
Well, Jack Hawksworth is a guy who's paid his dues in this series, and for Jack, I'm really excited for him, actually. The first two races taken out by something that really wasn't all his fault. You had the willpower stack up at the start in St. Petersburg, and at Long Beach again, getting caught up in somebody else's mess. But for him, even though it wasn't quite as high as he would have liked to have been, he's impressing a lot of people, made some good on-track overtakes at Alabama, and I think it's only a matter of time, even if it isn't this year, before we see Jack Hawksworth running with a much better team and getting much better results than fringe top 10. This kid is the real deal. We often overlooked Jack Hawksworth. There's the Brabham name that gets thrown around in Indy Lights. So we talk about Zach Beach, Sage Karam, and this isn't to discredit any of those guys at all, but Jack Hawksworth has really flown under the radar. He's paid his dues in these lower series. He's been impressive in these lower series. Won at St. Petersburg every single time he's driven there, as a matter of fact, between all the divisions in the Mazda Road to Indy that he's driven in. This kid's the real deal, and especially as the season goes on and Brian Herta Autosport gets better and better and really gets in sync, I think we're going to see him consistently scoring top 10 points.
Certainly goes to show that Indy Lights can produce. And speaking of Indy Lights producing, one last thing I'll get in, and then I think Jacob wants to take us to a break. But how about Sage Karam getting picked up? That rumor that I don't know if it was a rumor at all. Actually, Robin Miller, Joel, basically saying that Davey Hamilton told him that he, in conjunction with Dreyer Reinbold, is going to field a car for Sage Karam for Chip Ganassi for this year's Indy 500, which, according to Robin, would be the 32nd entry.
Stop stealing my points.
Well, Dreyer Reinbold, they've got to be getting some money out of this for Ganassi, and they're getting quite a great driver in Sage Karam. Just 19 years old. The Indianapolis 500 weekend is actually going to coincide with his high school graduation, but he's really good. Of course, the 2013 Indy Light Series champion, finished third at Indianapolis in the Freedom 100 last year with Schmidt-Peterson Motorsports. He's definitely the real deal. He's got a little bit of sports car racing and actually led the 12 Hours of Sebring for a little while in the afternoon, holding off Sebastian Bourdais. He's been impressive in everything he's run. The real question is, though, where does that leave us in car count? Because a lot of people suspected that Sage Karam would somehow work his way into Ganassi, but maybe not through Dreyer Reinbold. So I think in terms of the possibilities for how many cars we could field, as a maximum, I think we were at 35 before this announcement. Now we're looking more that the maximum would be 34, with about 32 relatively sure who's going to be the 33rd, if there is a 33rd. Now, that's much more up to debate, both as to which drivers would be filling that hypothetical seat and which team would be fielding a car for that driver.
James Jakes, anybody?
Well, he's the name that's getting thrown around the most. It's just a question of where is that car going to come from. Honda said that they're essentially done with fielding engines for this race, so it would have to come from Chevrolet, and most of your big teams are already maxed out. Now, there is still a month to go before this race, and so often in the final weeks we see rides coming together. I'm cautiously optimistic, as I am every single year for the past few years, that we will get the full field at Indianapolis. And I do think that more than likely it would end up being James Jakes. It's really just a question of which team, because there's rumors out there. We had heard about Dreyer Reinbold for a while. We've heard about possibly even Penske throwing on one more, although I would really not see that happening at this point. They've already got 3. I doubt that Penske will get thrown in the mix. Is there an outsider who perhaps wants to come in? There's so many things that happen behind closed doors that we don't really know about. So if something is being pieced together, it's definitely a well-kept secret, but so many things are in open wheel.
Yeah, they're certainly much more secretive than NASCAR. I mean, there's nothing that's a secret in that garage area, Joel. The Chevy deal is what's intriguing. The fact, Tom and I were talking about it yesterday. We were looking at this as a situation where you've got KV. They've got 3 cars. They've said they're done. You've got most of these Chevrolet teams that are tapped out. Tom and I isolated. It's either a 4th Penske car or it's somebody that none of us know about, because all the other teams that were Chevy last year that you would think, oh, they can put another car underneath them, they've all switched to Honda.
Well, one of the lines that I had been using is that with Panther Racing, suing everybody that walks the earth that has anything to do with racing is a great way to get your Indy 500 credentials lost in the mail. And I've still heard Kurt Caven, for example, from Indy Star. I know he's tossed around the possibility of possibly Panther coming in. But you're right. With Chevrolet, that's what really throws a wrench into this, because it would have to be a Honda. Now, here's the other question, too. If you're throwing together something so late, you're not really a contender to win the race. More than likely, you're not going to be fielding a great car. What would you rather have? If the 33rd car was something like we saw a couple years ago with Jean Alesi and a Lotus, would you rather have the field filled at 33 like that? Or would you rather just have it at 32, no back markers, and is it really that big a black eye for the series? One other thing I would possibly throw out that I don't know how realistic it would be given IndyCar's budget, but we know that they have the Leader Circle program, which essentially what the Leader Circle program does, it was established in 2002, provides incentives to teams that participate full-time in the series, and they're assured a minimum of $1 million for the season if the entrant qualifies for the Indy 500. So you've got that backing, but if it's so tough to fill the field, why not offer some sort of stipend to an Indy Lights team, for example, or to some other team as an incentive to get those drivers up? Maybe field, if they have a $1 million scholarship for the winner of that series, why not field $500,000 or a little bit less than that, at least something for the winner of the Freedom 100 the previous year, or at least something to add a little bit more incentive for people to spend money and actually go out there and build a car for the Indy 500, because even though, through all the series, it's just price. It's really, really hurting these teams, the amount of money that it costs, especially for just one race to field a car. So why not do something like that and, maybe offer a little bit more of an incentive than they already do? Because I do think that even if it's 32 great cars and 32 of the best drivers in the world competing in the Indianapolis 500, it's still a black eye if you can't get to 32. It would be like the Daytona 500 running with 42 cars because they couldn't fill 43. I long for the glory days of bump day. I think everyone does. But realistically, let's just get to 33. And I'm still cautiously optimistic, but I am not 100% sure that we're going to fill the field this year. But we've had this conversation the last 4 years, and it's all worked out.
Exactly. So we'll see exactly what happens, Joel. I'm certainly excited. Last tidbit, Kurt Busch announcing sponsorship along with Andretti Autosport for that 26 entry for the 500. And boy, let me tell you, that car is one of the slickest looking pieces I've seen try to tackle the 2.5 miles in Indy in a long, long time.
Yeah, we'll be running for Andretti Autosport, trying to pull the double in the number 26 machine, sponsored by Tone Entertainment. Silver, black, very sleek. When I first looked at it, it was a rough angle on Twitter. It almost reminded me of the Tony Kanaan Hydroxy Cup machine with a little bit more silver. But thankfully, when I actually saw it on the side, it looked much, much better than that. A beautiful looking car, very sleek. I think a lot of people are going to be very interested to see just what Kurt Busch can do in an Indy car. It's not going to be easy. I don't suspect that it'll be anywhere near the level of success that A.J. Allmendinger had, given his pedigree. But kudos to Kurt Busch for trying it. And Andretti Autosport also fielding an extra car for the Grand Prix as well. Going to have Frank Montagny hopping in the car. 3 consecutive wins at Petit Le Mans. He's finished on the podium at the 24 Hours of Le Mans multiple times. Very established sports car driver. Had a stint as a test driver for Renault for a little while in Formula One. Also raced for Super Aguri. That didn't go so well in Formula One in 2006, but he's got quite the international pedigree, and it'll be interesting to see what he does on the road course too. A guy who's driven on the Indy road course before, I believe, and definitely has had great success in things outside of open wheel and in open wheel in the early 2000s in Formula Renault and some of the other feeder series. So Andretti Autosport definitely going out of their way to spend some money to field 2 unique entries at Indianapolis, 2 different races this May.
Absolutely. And Joel, I think this is really the last lull week we've got before everything kicks off. We know the month of May is coming, but this weekend, our final off weekend, I believe. No IndyCar racing, no Formula One racing this weekend. The only point of interest that I can think of that we might throw you to would be the Tudor sports car race over in the California area at Laguna Seca this weekend. Other than that, no open wheel racing this weekend. So open wheel fans, as Joel I think would put it, enjoy the gap while you can, because you won't be able to rest come 2 weeks from now.
I don't think anybody really enjoys the gap outside of the drivers, but Saturday, May 10th, you've got the inaugural Grand Prix of Indianapolis for IndyCar hitting the track, and Sunday morning, 7:30 a.m. on NBC Sports Network, coverage begins for the Spanish Grand Prix in Catalunya, so things will start picking up, and even though there's no racing for open wheel this coming weekend, I suspect there's going to be a good bit of news coming from somewhere. Just what that will be, whether it's a 33rd entry to the Indy 500 or something else from the Indy 500, I'm sure that something is going to fill the lull.
So we'll see you in a week, Joel, and see if we can't break it all down, and certainly looking forward to it. Always appreciate you coming on.
Always great to be on wherever you may be and whatever you may be watching. Enjoy your racing this weekend.
With that, we're going to take a caution flag. When we come back, we're going to get into the second half of Open Wheel Central and start talking super modified mania, Tom. I'm ready for this, so let's get right to it after these words. You are listening to Speed 77 Radio and Race Chaser Online. We'll be right back.
For every turn, a twist. For every start, an untimely finish. For every win, someone who loses it. For every number, a nation. For every celebration, a brawl. For every split second, years of work. For every heaven, a hell. For every good old boy, a good old girl. For every curse, a prayer. For every ounce of order, a jug of chaos. For every twist, there's a turn.
Hi, this is Jamie McMurray here for RAD, the entertainment industry's voice for road safety. Want to make a difference? It's simple. Be responsible. Plan ahead. Designate before you celebrate. Friends don't let friends drive drunk.
Baby, you can drive my car. Yes, I'm gonna be a star.
A public service message brought to you by the U.S. Department of Transportation, RAD, the National Association of Broadcasters, and the Ad Council.
I'm Jacob Seelman.
And I'm Tom Baker.
You're listening to Speed 77 Radio,
powered by Race Chaser Online.
We are your home for motorsports.
Welcome back to the madness here on Speed 77 Radio and Race Chaser Online. Now we're back on the clock. Jacob Seelman, Tom Baker, Kyle Souza at the round table. Tom, I think this, for me, might be a personal bit of satisfaction as we start this next segment of our show. I've waited 5 months to be able to say this. It's time for Super Modified Mania on the Madness.
Well, same here, bud. I mean, that's kind of what I grew up with for the first 35 years of my life, going to the Oswego Speedway every Saturday night, at least for most of them, except when I was off working somewhere else, and just really excited that the Supers are opening their season. The open practice, first one of the year for Oswego, happened this past Saturday and under very soggy conditions, but they got at least one round in before they had to call it for the day. But good to see some Supers back on the track and a lot of Supers being built this year for Oswego competition and a lot of things new at the Fast 5/8 of a mile, which is the true home of the Super Modifieds now.
Not just the true home, Tom, but the original home of super modified racing. The division, really, that's where it all started back in the 50s and 60s, with the International Classics growing to be one of the biggest races in short track competition. Nowadays, on Labor Day weekend, Labor Day Sunday at sunset, always just one of the most incredible spectacles in all of motorsports. If you've never gotten the chance to see it go see it someday on Labor Day weekend. It's incredible. I keep swearing. I've seen it on the Oswego pay-per-view 5 or 6 times before, and I keep swearing one of these days I will make it to a classic in person, because there's too much history and too much fantastic racing that's gone on over the years to not go and see it.
Well, the Classic actually started in 1957 when Oswego was still running the old modified sportsman cars, the coupes and the coaches, etc. The supers really didn't come to Oswego until the early 60s, when a couple of folks from Michigan brought cars up to race against the modifieds and basically whooped on them. And then Oswego became a full-time weekly super modified racetrack after that. It's been that way ever since, and now it's the only one in the country, and it's really the home base now for the ISMA Super Modified Tour as well. They've got about 13 shows on the calendar this year, but about 4 of them, I should say, I think are at Oswego, and so it really is living up to its reputation, and they're going to probably, I would say, probably 25 to 30 cars this year on a weekly basis at Oswego with all of the new car construction. And, of course, we've got a very interesting interview coming up with Dan Kapuzinski, Oswego's PR director and a former racer in the super modified division there, as well as the small block division and the street stock division and the go-karts out back where he's still a reigning champion. And Dan's about done it all at Oswego, I think. But now he's been heading up Oswego's PR the last couple of years, and he and I spent some time earlier chatting about what was going on for this year in the Supers, and we'll have that coming up momentarily. But yeah, it's going to be a big year, and definitely an exciting year for Oswego, and it all gets started here in just a week or so.
Yeah, it does. Real quick before we cut to what was a great preview that you had with Danny Kaye, looking at the ISMA Tour, because they are the headline this weekend. Last year was really an incredible season with Liquid Lou Ciccone grabbing the championship over Mike Lichty, who was looking to go back-to-back. I think Shu 2, DJ Schulich, going to be on the ISMA Tour a bunch this season. Lou moving over to the Clyde Booth car as Vic Miller cutting back to a part-time schedule for about the 5th time over the course of his career. We've heard that story a time or two. But, Tom, who do you like for this ISMA Tour this year? It seems like it's very different compared to how it was in 2013.
Well, I don't know if it's really that much different. Obviously, Liquid Lou running with Clyde Booth is going to be interesting to watch. I mean, that's going to be a real intriguing pairing because, Clyde likes to tinker a lot, and he likes to work on the car, and he's constantly trying to make it better. And when that car finishes races, it's normally up front, and Lou is certainly not afraid to mash the gas. So that's going to be a real interesting pairing for this year. I think probably, I know one thing, Chris Purley will be back at Oswego this coming weekend, and that's going to make for anytime Chris Purley's in a race car, you've got yourself a race to watch, and so it'll be nice to see Chris back. But really, I think the big thing everybody's going to be watching is Shu 2, Dave Schulich Jr., because of course, he set that blistering 14.9 second lap at Oswego last Classic weekend, averaging 150 miles an hour on the 5/8 mile track. He and Mike Lichty, and Dan will allude to a lot of this too, he and Mike Lichty really are the ones that put on the show. And now, of course, with Lou Ciccone moving over and Purley's still going to be there, and there are some other folks as well who always are contenders, but I think those are the ones that everybody's going to be keeping their eye on the most, along with Allison Cummins, who just does a great job. She's a fantastic female racer and got a top 5 finish last year at the ISMA Nationals on Classic weekend at Oswego. And so, definitely a lot to look forward to for the ISMA Tour. And I got to tell you, I think that I think Mike Lichty is definitely going to be one to watch. But boy, the Shu 2 is. I mean, I'm really eager to see what the new car does when it gets out. But boy, they've got a rocket for DJ to drive, and anytime he's on the track, I think he's going to be the guy to beat.
It's going to be interesting to see, isn't it? So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a 15-second pause for station identification, and then we will lead right into Tom's 2014 Oswego Speedway preview with Dan Kapusinski. We'll be right back.
I'm Jacob Seelman.
And I'm Tom Baker.
You're listening to Speed 77 Radio,
Powered by Race Chaser Online.
We are your home for motorsports.
Welcome back to the madness here on Speed 77 Radio, powered by RaceChaserOnline.com. Jacob Seelman, Kyle Souza, and Tom Baker here at the round table, and we alluded to it right before the break there. We're now going ahead right into a 2014 Oswego Speedway preview. Tom, you got the chance to talk with PR Director Danny Kapusinski, and we're going to roll the tape to hear what all Danny's got to say about the Big O for 2014.
Danny Kapusinski, Oswego Speedway's PR Director. Welcome to Motorsports Madness. Danny K., we are getting down to crunch time. You had a cold and rather soggy open practice on Saturday. Let's start there. Talk about who did we see at the practice? What were some of the highlights, as much as it probably was given the conditions? And tell us what we learned from that practice.
Well, we learned that we've got a lot of people that are real anxious to see some racing in Oswego, I'll tell you that. If there were gray, gloomy, and cold and somewhat wet skies, but quite a few people actually turned out to sit in the grandstands, and we had a few instances where we had to put push vehicles out on the track to try and dry it up, and everybody stayed in their seats and watched the trucks race around, eating their Hoffman hot dogs and having a Coca-Cola to drink, so that was good to see. It was good to see the enthusiasm from everybody in town on Saturday. And despite the weather, we still had over 20 race cars in the pit area between our small block superclass, the Novella Supermodifieds, and we had two ISMA Supermodifieds at the track as well. So while we didn't quite get the number of laps we would have liked to have seen, each division of cars got out onto the track one time. So we got the smell, we got the sound, and got ourselves ramped up for our big opening weekend coming up this Saturday.
And you had a few kind of, let's say, new and different, or a few notable things. I know that Michael Muldoon had a gorgeous new car there, and good to see Stephen Joya back, both, of course, Novella's Supermodified competitors.
Yeah, on the Supermodified front, I think we had a total of 7 guys come out to the track. Of course, the Muldoon car, brand new. Mike Muldoon put that together with the assistance of his son, Michael. They went and really did their homework this year from an aerodynamic standpoint for this race car. The suspension on the car is much the same as Mike has always built. He believes very firmly in his torsion bar suspension. It's a 4-bar car with outboard front shocks like he's always had, but they lowered the roll cage about 5 or 6 inches. They tilted the engine to the left, and Michael actually designed his own rear wing for the car. So they believe that aerodynamic-wise, they're at a point now where they think they can go from that 16.7 to 16.8 bracket and get themselves down to that 16.4 16.3 zone that you kind of need to be at when it comes to time trialing and starting up front for races such as the International Classic. But it really was no surprise, though. The one session we did have, Otto Sitterly was the fastest car on the track. He had 2 of his 3 race cars in the pits on Saturday, shaking things down. So, like you mentioned, though, Stephen Joya was in town as well. He just went out and kind of fired the car up. They're going to be ready to practice again this Friday. It's really exciting to have the Joya family back week in and week out this year.
Absolutely.
Syracuse Orthopedic Specialists are the sponsors that came on board with the 9 car this year, so Stephen can race each and every Saturday night with us, and we're looking forward to that. But it's interesting, too, and I was having a conversation with somebody about this last night. We had, Otto Sitterly, Pat Lavery, Sean Goslin, Michael Muldoon, David Danzer, and I just would not be at all surprised if when it comes to the end of September, the guys that were ready and the guys that were here and ready to go for this practice, aren't all going to be in the top 10, maybe the top 5, battling for a championship at year end.
Yeah, it would make perfect sense. I mean, you really want to have your car out. Of course, the weather, I'm sure, kept the speeds down. I saw that Otto was, I think, in the 17.5 range or so, which obviously is not going to be where they're at when, with ideal conditions. But, still, I mean, having the car out and ready and taking advantage of every bit of seat time you can get makes a difference.
Well, when you think about it, just the opportunity, with a super modified to go someplace and get it fired up and just get it on the track and just run a few laps, make sure nothing's rattling around and all your plumbing is done correctly. There's no leaks or anything like that. It was, even though they only got on the racetrack one time, I think each and every one of the drivers that did get out would say it was valuable time. And of course, we have another open practice for our divisions this Friday before our opener from 6 until 10 o'clock. And any of the racers that were here this past Saturday are invited back to that session for free on Friday with their wristband and ticket, just because we really couldn't give them the laps we wanted to on Saturday. But we did the best we could in order to try and do that. So.
Absolutely. So let's talk about some of there's just a plethora of new cars being built for different teams, some existing, some new. I know one of the teams I'm excited to know more about and hoping they'll be ready when it comes time is the new team with Michael Barnes and Sorrell Racing, the Hawk house car, so to speak. What's the word on that? And tell us about some of the other new teams that are coming along and new cars that have been built.
I actually talked to Eric Sorrell for a few minutes last week, and Michael is actually just finally back in town. He works outages like a lot of people in our area do at different nuclear facilities around the country. So Michael is actually back in town, back in Oswego. They're actually putting the finishing touches on that car as we speak. And I believe Michael and team plan to be here for the open practice this coming Friday. And I believe they're also looking at renting the Speedway the following week before the non-wing opener. So that's going to be an interesting combination, because we know that the Sorrell Racing team has had a lot of good runs in recent years with both Doug Didero, Dave McKnight, and of course Michael made himself available in the off season last year, and the Sorrells quickly scooped him right up. We know the kind of talent that Michael has. He's won races in just about every race car he's driven. And there's no doubt he's a great talent. And with that brand new Hawk car that they're going to have, he's going to have every resource at his disposal to try and chase down a guy like an Otto Sitterly and a Pat Lavery and others and run for the championship. The Hawk Garage has quite a few brand new cars coming out between Michael Barnes. Dave Gruhl is now running his own team with a brand new Hawk chassis. And, of course, the support of Enders Racing Engine. So he's going to have not only a great race car, but an excellent power plant as well. Timmy Snyder has a brand new Hawk that we're looking forward to seeing later on. So the Hawk group has really I think they put together at least 5 or 6 brand new race cars. Now, on the other front, you've got Team Extreme sort of over there with Graham Racing. They've got 2 brand new cars coming out, one for Ray himself and one for Joey Payne also. So that's going to be an interesting combination too. We've always kind of had that bit of a chassis rivalry between the Extremes, between the Hawks, and you're going to have Ray Graham kind of leading the Extreme side and Otto and the guys leading the Hawk side, and it's going to be interesting to see those two dynamics come together on opening day. So very, very exciting to see the new race cars we have coming out on the Speedway.
Now, Dave Dancer got a new one, but he's not planning on running both on a weekly basis, is he? Or even maybe, has there been any talk of another driver in one of the cars at any point at this point?
It's interesting to say they've been working very hard on the brand new car. The car that he brought to the Speedway on Saturday was his tried and true, the one he's won 3 races in. I guess you can say, I look at it as though I think there have been about probably 3 generations of Hawk chassis as we've gone through the years. His is probably generation 2. It's kind of in the middle. And the newer car, the plan is to have that out. And when I have talked to him, he said that he would have both cars here on a weekly basis. Now, both cars would not race every Saturday. The name we keep hearing surface as driving that car off and on, and potentially at the Classic, is actually one of our small block super regulars in Dalton Doyle, who, of course, works for Joey Hawksby full-time as a master fabricator. He may have his hands on Hawk chassis now more than Joey Hawksby does himself. And, of course, Dalton is building a brand-new Hawk designed small block Super as well that we're looking forward to seeing here in the next week or so. Dave and Dalton have always been really good friends, so that's kind of the name on that front right now for the 52 and the 72 cars that the Danzer team will have out this year.
Interesting. So the super field should be somewhere between 25 to 30 on May the 10th to start our opening day. I mean, what are we looking at realistically in terms of car count for the non-winged group when they start here in a couple of weeks?
It's always interesting to go down through the roster and think about the guys that could here and it could be here in May, kind of come out of the woodwork. My feeling is that we're going to be right at that, probably right at that 27 to 28 range. Sort of right on the cusp of having a Consi and potentially not having a Consi. I don't think we'll be right at the 30 mark just yet, but I'm already looking forward to International Classic because I really think we're at the point where we're going to get closer to that 40, 41, 42 car mark for that race coming in August. We're fortunate enough that we've got two very talented, well, actually more than two. Everybody always keys on Hawk and Extreme, but there's so many other people out there building race cars as well. You've got Chris Osetic down there in your guys' neck of the woods with Keith Champagne behind the wheel, Mike Muldoon and others. We're lucky that we have a lot of talented car builders, and we're in a situation where there's some backup cars sitting out there right now. And we're looking forward to those guys having those seats filled on a semi-regular basis. One of which obviously being the John Nicotra Racing team, who's going to have Davey Hamilton here on May 10th. And then 2 weeks later, Dave Shula Jr. is going to be in town driving the 2-car. So, we're going to have great fields week in and week out.
Well, and you've got something going this year too, again, with a little bit of a classic qualifying trail, if you will, hoping to entice some of the drivers from the other series to be able to come in and run the classic. Talk a little bit about what's going on with that.
Yeah, for the first time, and I believe it's right around 10 years or so, we're going to convert the guaranteed starter status for the International Classic back over to the driver. For quite a few years, that system got changed over to car owners with the thought that the guys from the Midwest Super Modified Association and the International Super Modified Association, the owners would convert their cars, bring them to Oswego, and put their drivers in. While we've seen the last 3 or 4 years that, unfortunately that's just not happening, but we always hear from a Trent Stevens or a Charlie Schultz or somebody else that's kind of, they're itching, They win races in their respective series, but they want to come to Oswego and run in, there's no doubt, the biggest super modified race in the world. And we're in a situation now, like I said earlier, where we've got some cars floating around where we decided that, okay, well, we're going to switch it back to drivers, and we're going to make it the top 2 in ISMA and MSA points on July 1st. So essentially halfway through the season, we will announce the guaranteed drivers at that point, essentially giving these drivers 2 full months to try and secure sponsorship and rides to come to Oswego and run in the biggest race there is for our type of racing.
So hopefully some of these teams with the newer style cars, the Oswego style cars that really aren't necessarily running in the other regions yet, hopefully some of these teams with second cars out there will be able to put some of these outsiders in the cars. So even if we don't get a lot of outside cars, we may get some outside drivers, the backup cars, to fill them in.
Exactly. One way or the other, our goal is to get the best talent in super modified racing back at Oswego for that race. And we think this is a good system to try and make that happen. We're also offering up a guaranteed starting spot for our leading small block super driver by July 1st as well, because we like to encourage the small block drivers to try and make that jump into the super modified class. One of the most recent drivers to make that jump, of course, is Brian Sodas, who actually now has secured his own race car for the upcoming season. So that's another driver that we can add to the roster for a classic weekend. It was very good to see Brian come through with a deal, basically acquiring the car that Dave Gruhl drove last season. I was talking to Bob Hofer some over the weekend, and you don't really think about it, but that car has won 7 features at Oswego Speedway between Bob Magner and others to have won races in that car. So Brian's going to have himself a nice ride come August.
Yeah, and that'll certainly be, Brian's great in the longer races, so that'll be a good classic situation for him for sure to make his debut with that. And of course, now that I would assume that cuts the Hofer operation down to one car now, just with Pat Lavery, correct?
Correct. Yeah, they're pretty much putting all their eggs in that basket, and they are very, very excited and confident for this coming year. I had a chance to do one of our Oswego Speedway shop talk sessions with Pat Lavery a couple of weeks ago, and he's super excited, especially since they teamed up a couple of years ago with both Dave and Eric Iosu. Dave Iosu goes back a long ways, helping out drivers. Steve Joya, Timmy Snyder, helped out Ray Graham for a while also. Those guys really know what they're doing, and it was great to see Pat really break through 2 years ago, I guess, as it were, when he nearly won the championship fighting with Otto Sitterly, and then, of course, he got his first feature win last year. So Double Deuce Racing is they've slimmed down a little bit, but I think they're going to pack a little bit of an extra punch this year. So.
Sounds interesting. Now let's talk real quick about the SBS series, the Small Block Super Series. You mentioned the new car that Dalton Doyle's building out of the Hawk chassis shop. That's going to be, I think, a car that probably a lot of the competition wishes wouldn't happen at this point. That's just my prediction. But what are you hearing about that car? Because I'm quite sure it's going to be different.
Well, I haven't had a chance to actually look at the car with my own eyes just yet, and you hear a lot of things in the city of Oswego. Just put it that way.
I know it.
There's been different rumors about what it might look like, what it might not look like. Dalton and team have posted some kind of vague photos of the car, but of course you really can't tell, what they've got going on under the sheet metal. I'm looking forward to seeing it, and I've talked to quite a few different people about it, and especially super modified fans in particular that are excited at the connection between a super modified builder being associated with the small block class. So we'll just have to see how it pans out. Is the car going to come right out and run a second faster than every other race car at the Speedway? I don't think so. Might it be 2 or 3 tenths faster, and everybody else is going to have to really do their homework? That's a good possibility. We've seen what Joey Hawksby's been able to do in the super modified division, and I don't see why it may not transfer to the small block class. But of course, we're not going to tell till it hits the track and we see exactly.
It'll be interesting, and of course, you still got all the heavy hitters coming back, with the exception of one. Russ Brown was at the open practice the other day, warming up the 18, the Crow Motorsports car for Andrew Schartner. But Russ is at least semi-retired this year, so he says. Anyway, he and Ray Hedger just looking at maybe some special shows, and I'm sure you'll see him for the Small Block Classic or Small Block Nationals. But nonetheless, the heavy hitters are still the heavy hitters, and a few of them have kind of switched places for this year.
Yeah, obviously you got to look right at the top of the list. Mike Bond was right behind Russ Brown last year, and another epic battle to the championship between those two guys. And Mike is one of the veteran drivers that's going to be back in his same role again. He's going to be back with 47's Motorsports. So with Russ essentially making the announcement that he's not going to be here every Saturday, that automatically vaults Mike right to the top of the list as the favorite for the championship this year. Behind him, you've got Team Tap Out again, re-gearing for the season, of course, owned by Jason Simmons. Jason will be in one car, J.J. Andrews in the second car, and then Barry Kingsley is actually coming back full-time, a veteran kind of making a return to the class. So we're looking forward to that. Craig Harris is still going to be right there in the 04 car, his Hedger fabrication chassis, of course, champion just a couple of years ago. The list goes on and on. Andrew Schartner and guys like that are just kind of, and Andrew's one of those guys that's kind of on the cusp of, we're hoping, being able to make that move to the super modified division, just like a Craig Harris. But right now, they're gonna keep contending in that small block class and try to look for a championship. So.
Should be exciting to watch the SBS division as always this year, and I'm sure the car counts are still going to be strong. Now let's talk about anything else new at the track itself. I mean, you've talked about some of the new wrinkles, the new programs for the cars. I mean, is there anything else at the Oswego Speedway that's kind of new and different for this year that the fans should know about?
Well, we're gearing up. Actually, our online Asphalt Vision pay-per-view schedule came out just last week. So we're going to be sticking with almost the same program as we had for our online video streaming sessions. Last year we had every event available live. This year we're only going to be posting about half of the races. I think it's 9 out of the 16 will be available for pay-per-view broadcast on asphaltvision.com. So those fans down in the South who maybe can't make it up to the Speedway every Saturday night, you're guaranteed to tune in to 4 to 5 camera HD coverage almost every Saturday. I think it pans out to be about 2 races a month that will be live. But we are going to offer for about $9.99 a tape delay version of the broadcast every Sunday for other races that we may not put live on the schedule. So you can make sure to visit OswegoSpeedway.com or AsphaltVision.com for that schedule. And we've got at least 2 more announcements that we're hoping to put out about International Classic Weekend. We don't quite have all the I's dotted and the T's crossed just yet, but I'll be sure to let you know, Tom, once all that comes through, so we can make hopefully 2 more big announcements about Classic Weekend coming up later in the season. So.
Sounds good. Looking forward to it. I'm anxious to get back up there. I'm going to try to be there a few times this year, but certainly Classic for sure. Okay, so with all that, now let's talk about the next 2 weeks. You have the ISMA Supers coming in for their first big show of the year on May the 3rd, which is this coming weekend. And then the weekend after that, the Oswego Unwinged Supers open up. Talk about what we can expect the first 2 weeks of the year.
It's really exciting to sort of have the opening week, I guess you can call it, that we've had here at the Speedway the last 2 years, kind of, once again, really hitting home that Oswego Speedway is no doubt the home of super modified. So we're going to kick off the ISMA season this Saturday. Looking forward to a very good field of cars, a very competitive field of cars. Chris Purley is expected to be back in town with us. Lou Ciccone, the defending ISMA champion, has actually made a move from Vic Miller Racing over to now drive the Clyde Booth number 61 car weekly with ISMA. So Lou is going to be here this Saturday in the Silver Bullet. But the big thing I'm looking forward to is sort of a little bit of a rivalry that was kind of ignited last year between our defending Super Series champion, which is Mike Lichty out of Canada, and Dave Schulich Jr. with the Jim Bodner number 94 car. They're both going to be here Saturday. I'm really looking forward to that because, as we know, Dave was able to set that blistering lap of 14.9 seconds back last Classic weekend, and Mike Lichty wanted nothing more than to be the first guy to get under 15 seconds. And Dave just barely nipped him out on that, but the 2 times they raced against each other, Lichty was able to beat him to the line first. So, and the racing aspect of it, Lichty had the advantage. Time trial-wise, Schulich had the advantage. But both going to be back this Saturday looking to get to victory lane, so I'm really looking forward to that. Allison Cummins is going to be here as well on Saturday. Of course, she finished 3rd. Actually, I think it was 4th last year in the ISMA Super Nationals.
Did a great job.
Weekend, and then had a 3rd-place finish about a month later at Thompson, Connecticut. So she's going to be back full-time with ISMA as well. So we're excited to get the gates open, have a good opening day, and then come right back the next week with hopefully our 27 to 28 non-wing Novella Super Modifieds with just a laundry list of amazing drivers from Otto Sitterly to Joey Payne and Pat Lavery, Ray Graham. Randy Ritzkis is going to be back running full-time, driving a car for Jeff Locke out of the Locke Crane Services stable, and Joe Gosick, and the list just goes on and on for our weekly non-wing racing that we're going to have every Saturday night.
Sounds like a plan for an exciting 2014 season. We're looking forward to doing as much as we can to help you get the word out and keep the word out for all of the fans down here in the South and beyond. And definitely excited to be talking with you as much as we can this year. So, Danny, I know OswegoSpeedway.com is the website. Where else can fans keep up?
Well, of course, you can keep up with our social media. We do pretty much as anybody else in racing on Facebook and Twitter. You can get us. It's official Oswego Speedway on Facebook, and of course at Oswego Speedway on Twitter. And if you're into the video type postings and whatnot too, we have Oswego Speedway online for our YouTube channel also. So I encourage everybody to check out those 3 applications along with OswegoSpeedway.com. And we've got news and information going up nearly 2 to 3, maybe sometimes 4 times a day on any one of those sites to keep everybody excited and looking forward to what we have next here at the Speedway.
All right. Danny Kaye, appreciate you taking so much time to yap with us here on Motorsports Madness, and Super Modified Madness is about to get underway at the fast 5/8 of a mile, and with all due respect to our friends from Martinsville, there ain't nothing like an Oswego Hoffman hot dog. Dan, take care. We'll talk to you again.
Thanks, Tom.
So, Tom, are we playing the game of how much super modified information can you fit into 20 minutes time? Certainly a lot of information and a lot of exciting things from Danny Kaye on all things super modified racing, related, winged, non-winged, small block, normal super modifieds, you name it. I think you two covered it.
we kind of had a laugh about it afterward because, we anticipated the normal interview, and all of a sudden, about 30 minutes later, it was done. But we hadn't talked all winter, basically, as far as an interview goes. So there was a lot to catch up on and a lot of stuff going on at Oswego. It's really a very, very active super modified scene up there right now, much more so than it's been for a number of years. So it's really cool to see what's going on there. And of course, not only did I have a chat with someone from the Oswego Speedway, but you had a chat with someone from the Oswego Speedway as well, one of the, as they say in these parts, youngins.
That's right, and we're going to hear from him and talk a little bit more about him right after these words. When we come back, we're going to hear from young super modified pilot making his rookie debut at the Oswego Speedway this weekend, and a name that has a long history at Oswego. We'll hear from Camden Proud coming up right after these words.
For 17 years, Stock Car Steel has been a leading material supplier to the racing industry. We're proud they're a motorsports content partner here at Race Chaser Online. The biggest names in NASCAR trust Stock Car Steel for raw materials such as carbon steel, chrome moly, DOM, aluminum, plastics, and much more. You can't build a race car without the basic materials, and Stock Car Steel is the place to get them. Don't forget to also visit Stock Car Steel's sister company, SRI Supplies, for racing and industry. SRI is the place to go for all your shop supply needs. Nuts, bolts, rivets, tapes, adhesives, cutting tools, chemicals, body shop supplies, paint shop supplies, lubricants, and more. A well-stocked race shop is a winning race shop, and the path to winning begins with 3 letters, SRI. For more information, visit stockcarsteel.com or SRI-supplies.com. Check them both out on Facebook or call them toll-free at 1-888-752-7272, 1-888-752-7272.
I'm Jacob Seelman.
And I'm Tom Baker.
You're listening to Speed77 Radio,
Powered by Race Chaser Online.
We are your home for motorsports.
Welcome back to Motorsports Madness here on Speed77 Radio and RaceChaserOnline.com. Jacob Seelman, Tom Baker, Kyle Souza around the round table, and Tom continuing our foray through the super modified world. Now we hear from one of the rookie pilots for 2014, and his family has had a long history at the Oswego Speedway. Camden Proud on his debut start this weekend at the Steel Palace, driving the number 54 in the small block super class, sponsored by Pathfinder Bank 2014. Tom, that class always very, very competitive, very hotly contested, and you and I have talked to Cam a lot over the winter, and this is a young man who and there's a little bit of nerves on his shoulders, but he's very calm, very collected, and I don't think I've seen a driver more excited to get behind the wheel of a race car than this young man has been the last couple of weeks.
It's the kid in a candy store mentality is what it is. I mean, Cam is such a breath of fresh air because, he's just so, like you said, he's so excited, he's so energized, he's so ready to go. And I had the opportunity to actually interview him last year, late in the season, after he'd spent some time behind the wheel of the car just hot lapping it. And he's just a really neat young man, and of course, you're right. His family has quite a history at the track. I mean, his dad, Tim, raced supers for a while, and of course, Uncle Chris on the wheel of the small block originally, and has run that quite a bit with some good success. And so, great to see young Camden getting his shot at the big time at Oswego in the family-owned small block. A beautiful car this year. Love the paint scheme on it, and just a really sharp-looking car. And I'm excited to see Cam get his chance to go out there and actually get to race.
Oh, I think there's a lot of people that are really excited to see his shot to race, and he gets it this weekend. Struggled a little bit in the test session that they had last weekend And although, Tom, I think part of that contributed to the rain, but, they're just, I feel like, searching for that right combination in the hit. So, as they say, for a rookie's first time out, it may be a little rough sailing for this first race, but I feel like that he's so adaptable and so easygoing and so receptive to what everybody's trying to teach and hit on what he wants to make that car go fast. I feel like he could be a threat this year.
Well, it'll take a little while. I mean, he first has to learn what he wants before he can communicate it. He came out of the quarter midget ranks, and so it's a very different type of driving approach and driving mentality than what he was used to with the quarter, and also obviously a lot faster. But Cam did a good job last year getting some seat time in the car during Classic Week. And we're having some issues with it, and he just kept getting faster and faster, and really, I thought, just looked very mature. But it's going to take a while. It's a little different when you're under race conditions. He's going to have a whole other set of new experiences when he gets on the track to race for the first time, and, he's quite young, but I think if he will, you're right, one of his great attributes I think that he has is he listens very well. He doesn't have an ego. He doesn't have any false expectations for himself. I think he understands that, he needs to roll the car into the pits after the races as intact as possible, especially early in the season, and just go out and get seat time. So I think he'll be wise when he's on the track, and I don't think, he'll overextend himself. So I think he's going to eventually, I think, because he is so intelligent and he has grown up around it, and he is now spending more time around the car and working on the car and learning the car. I think he will eventually grow into one of the top drivers in that division, and very marketable young kid as well, as you'll hear in the interview. Just very well spoken, and again, just a lot of fun to be around, and it's just gonna be fun. There's some good young talent in that division. Anthony Lacerdo, and some of the other younger drivers that have gotten into the division in the last 2-3 years have really sparked that small block super class even more. And then, of course, you look at the veterans like Mike Bond and some of the other drivers that Danny talked about earlier. It's a lot of fun to watch, and it's a good breeding ground for future super modified competitors. So certainly Cam is a driver that I think, given enough time, if he does the right things in the beginning and doesn't try to do too much, just goes out and tries to learn and just do something better every week than he did the week before, I think he's going to be an outstanding young racer.
I really agree, and we've built it up so much. Let's not wait any longer. Let's roll the tape and get a chance to hear from the young man who a lot of people are circling as one to watch in the coming years, as I got the chance to sit down with Camden to talk about his upcoming debut for 2014 here this weekend.
Jacob Zielman for Speed77 Radio and RaceChaserOnline.com, sitting down for a featured interview as the super modified opening weekend in the Northeast gets set to kick off with small block super rookie at Oswego Speedway for 2014, Camden Proud. Camden, first off, thank you for taking the time to talk with us here tonight on the Madness, and I know everybody's really anticipating your debut this weekend at the Steel Palace. You tested over the weekend and struggled a little bit trying to get the car going and get it where you felt comfortable, but talk about what this weekend is going to mean for you, because I know this is something that for you and your entire family has been a long time coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Definitely very excited for this weekend. Always have wanted to do this since I was a little kid, going up to watch my dad, and this practice the past weekend was a little tough with the rain. Couldn't really get up to speed, running much slower than the test sessions last year, but I think once we get some more track time, hopefully this Friday during the practice session, we can work the bugs out and get it back down where it should be.
Oswego, a track with so much history over the years, and your family has a long-rooted history in super modified racing as well. What's it meant to you not only to turn laps at the racetrack, but to turn laps under the guidance of your dad and have the support of your family behind you going into this weekend that's seen so much success and so much history in the sport over the years?
Oh, it's awesome. When you walk into Oswego, it just feels like you've walked into, like a museum, like a place of motorsports history, and to be able to drive there and just start the feature on Saturday, hopefully, that'll just be amazing in itself. And to have my dad behind me and my family who, I grew up watching, and it's just really cool to be a second-generation driver and have my dad support and take his tips and get ready to go this weekend.
You're one of the youngest drivers in the field and one of the youngest SBS pilots in the history of the Speedway. For you, is that any added pressure or any added nerves going into this weekend, knowing that the learning curve is going to be a little bit steep at the start?
I'm definitely nervous. I'm sure I'll have some butterflies getting in the car before the feature, but my time and keep the car in one piece, respect my equipment, respect my fellow drivers, and just miss those wrecks.
The crashes, I know, always something that can come up and bite you to notice. What's some of the challenges that you've had to face in testing and getting this car ready to go? Because we know it's been documented you have struggled getting this car right going into this weekend, but what's been some of the challenges you've faced in the track time you've already had?
Last year, during the Classic Week test, I just got down to running some 19.7s, high 19 second times, and unfortunately we had a bolt in the Panhard bar brake over in turn 4, and that kind of hampered the rest of the day. We fixed that and went back out, and the clutch slipped, and the motor wasn't right for the rest of the evening, so I couldn't really get up to speed. And just this past Saturday, when I went out, like I said, the rain was obviously an issue, and it was damp, and it seemed like every time I went out it started to sprinkle a little bit. Got really loose and just barely touched the wall a little bit coming out of 2 that last session when it started to rain a little bit harder, but thankfully the only damage to the car was a scraped up wheel, but I was quite frustrated with all my dad's hard work and it being a brand new car to have that happen the first time out, but I'm glad it's, what it was, because it could have been much worse.
Certainly the optimism, I know one of the qualities that everybody who's watched you get ready for this weekend has been really high on, and a lot of people saying that you've got that veteran mentality already. For you, coming out of this weekend, what's going to be the biggest thing for you to keep in mind as we go through the season here? Obviously, we know the learning curve is going to be steep, as it would be for any rookie, but for you, what's going to be the biggest thing that you're focused on this year?
Just really, I don't have a big focus. My goal is Rookie of the Year, but I just want to learn a little bit more every week, take all the tips I can, make sure I keep the car in one piece and earn the respect of everyone else up there. And I hope the finish takes care of itself in doing that, just looking ahead, watching the cars in front of me, and learning.
We've said it a couple times, learning. That's going to be the key for you this season. And Cam, I know you're very much anticipating this weekend, and it certainly wouldn't be possible without a lot of the people and supporters behind you that have helped make all this come together. And you've named a few of them already, but I'm going to step back and let you give some shout-outs. Talk about who all's made it happen for Camden Proud.
Yeah, first off, I got to thank my dad. He started work on this car 2 years ago and teamed up with my Uncle Chris to drive this last year, and something like I said several times, something I've always wanted to do, and that was the first jump I wanted to make when we got out of the quarter midgets, and he made that happen for me by working so hard to build this car, and my 2 parents go without to make all of this possible. Thanks to all the sponsors who have jumped on this year. Step One Creative, our primary sponsor, they're a marketing firm here in Oswego, and I want to thank Shane, Mark, Shelby, and Mallory over there for everything they've done for me, designing the car, the graphics, and I look forward to all the fun events we have planned with them this summer. The car really looks awesome, and thank them for the design. I want to welcome back Ken's Body Shop, Oswego Quality Carpet, All Seasons Inn, and Beacon Hotel. Thank GJP Italian Eatery here in Oswego for jumping on board as a sponsor of us this year as well.
Real quick, talking about the car, I know you decided for this season not to go the family route with your car number, but you actually branched off and picked the number 54 for your small block debut this weekend. Any specialty behind the 54? Any particular reason you picked it?
The 22 and 04 were my dad's numbers, and I had always used those two numbers throughout the quarter midget racing, but was already taken in the S class, and I honestly really liked more, and I wanted something that was different and unique to me, that fresh, coming in as a new rookie. I'm not sure if any other limited has ever been numbered 54. We went with that, and I like it. I think it looks really well on the car. I like how it fits in with the paint scheme.
Now, let's be honest. The number 54, as far as motorsports in general, has certainly seen some success already. Kyle Busch in the Nationwide Series comes to mind, so maybe it'll bring you some of the same success.
I hope so. That'd be nice.
Cam, again, we appreciate you taking the time to talk with us on the show tonight. Wish you all the best as you embark on opening weekend this weekend at Oswego for the Small Block Super Road to the Championship, and look forward to hearing about all your continued success in 2014. Hope to have you back on the show a little bit later in the summer, talking about some successes and maybe some challenges for the victory later this season.
That would be great. Really appreciate having me.
And Tom, let me tell you what, certainly great conversation that I had with him. Had a lot of fun, and I think he's going to do great things this season because he's a young man who has a lot of promise going for him, and I'm excited to see what he can do this weekend. Of course, not expecting him to contend for the win or anything like that, but looking to see growth from him on the racetrack, and really excited to see what he can do.
Yeah, no doubt. Again, it's going to take time. He's going to have to really, as he said, he's going to have to watch the cars in front of him and learn from what they're doing. And I'm sure he's been around long enough to know who to learn what to do from and who to learn what not to do. There are a few of those in the class as well, but as there are in any class of racing. But the main thing is for him to just stay out of trouble and get finishes, because it obviously does no good if you're coming off on the hook. So, the main thing is just to get seat time, log a lap, really get used to the car, and, each week try to do something better than you did it the week before, and sooner or later that puts you in the mix, and you just start moving up from there. But that class it's a very tough class, because for those who aren't familiar with the Oswego SBS class, it is not the same as a super modified car in terms of the chassis. It's a completely different car. Look at and definitely a challenge past, because there's not the same amount of horsepower, and it's a lot harder to pass on the outside with a small block at Oswego than it is with a good hooked up super, and so it definitely is a challenge. You really have to be careful and use your head. But I think Cam's up for it, and I think he's going to grow into a very good race car driver, as long as he just follows his own philosophy and just takes it easy at the beginning and spends more time looking and learning than he does, really trying to be too aggressive.
That's exactly right, and we wish him all the best, as we do to all the pilots this weekend who will take to the track at the Steel Palace for opening day for the 64th straight time at Oswego. Always fun, Tom. I know you and I both wish we could be there this weekend, but no, Danny Kaye and the rest of the staff are going to put a great show on, and looking forward to hearing all about it for next Monday's edition of the Madness. And with that, we're going to take off the final caution flag of the night. We conclude the madness right after this. You are listening to Speed77 Radio and Race Chaser Online. We'll be right back.
At Peak, we're the independent guys, running a family-owned business. Nothing like big oil. Where American-made quality and value go into good, honest oil, with everything your engine needs to run right for the long haul. And what gets our motor going is using 65 years of experience in hot and cold protection to give you what's right for your engine and your wallet. Because we're car guys like you. Peak. Run true.
For 17 years, Stock Car Steel has been a leading materials supplier to the racing industry. We're proud they're a Motorsports content partner here at Race Chaser Online. The biggest names in NASCAR trust Stock Car Steel for raw materials such as carbon steel, chrome moly, DOM, aluminum, plastics, and much more. You can't build a race car without the basic materials, and Stock Car Steel is the place to get them. Don't forget to also visit Stock Car Steel's sister company, SRI Supplies, for racing and industry. SRI is the place to go for all your shop supply needs. Nuts, bolts, rivets, tapes, adhesives, cutting tools, chemicals, body shop supplies, paint shop supplies, lubricants, and more. A well-stocked race shop is a winning race shop, and the path to winning begins with 3 letters, SRI. For more information, visit stockcarsteel.com or SRI-supplies.com. Check them both out on Facebook or call them toll-free at 1-888-752-7272, 1-888-752-7272.
I'm Jacob Seelman.
And I'm Tom Baker.
You're listening to Speed 77 Radio,
Powered by Race Chaser Online.
We are your home for motorsports. Welcome back to the madness here on Speed 77 Radio and RaceChaserOnline.com. Jacob Seelman, Kyle Souza, Tom Bear, and Stephen Ovens joining us now as we get set to conclude tonight's edition of the madness. A little bit of an extended overdrive edition, if you will. And I want to turn to Steve because we had an exciting weekend of dirt track racing, my friend, didn't we? Some Outlaws action in the Midwest for the first time in 2014, and I always love it when they take a swing through the Midwest because there's so many diverse racetracks there, and we saw some exciting racing, too.
We sure did. Friday night was a great show out at the Salina High Banks, and I got to tell you, Saturday night's show at I-55 was probably the World of Outlaws STP Sprint Cars race of the year. I just watched their highlight package. Clint watched live on Saturday. He was doing some updates on the Turn 5 page, and I was getting message after message about how good that race was. And if anybody didn't get a chance to see Saturday night's feature event, go over to the World of Outlaws Facebook page and do yourself a favor and check that out. They've got highlight packages from each of their events, and boy, what a run on Saturday. But let's start with Friday. Joey Saldana, we've talked about him the last couple of weeks or so, about a guy that's really starting to turn it on. He got win number 2 on Friday night, and now has really emerged as the points leader and a guy that you go through to get this championship. He won quick time on Friday and on Saturday, and he got the win on Friday night as well, holding off Kerry Madsen.
Let's see, Stephen, that's what, 9 quick times for Saldana so far this season?
I actually do not have that number in front of me, but he did pick up both of them this weekend. You know, when you hear that he took over the points lead, you really kind of think back to last year where Darren Pittman had a whole slew of quick time. How he was able to give himself an edge over Donnie, 20 victories on the season Friday, and Kerry Madsen on Friday night getting a podium finish in as many races. So
definitely exciting. You know, the Madman is always fun to watch, and I've been impressed at how good he's been so far this season, Stephen. Just, you know, didn't expect Kerry to be one of the big contenders, and he's really surprised me being within 50 points of the championship lead right now. That's a car that, you know, is always good for a couple wins every year, but the Madman putting on some mad drives, and boy, he's right in the thick of it.
Yeah, he is, and you want to talk about putting on a mad drive. He did that on Saturday. He was running in the top 5 during the feature event Saturday night at I-55, which of course is Kenny Schrader's track there out in the Midwest, Peevely, Missouri. And Kerry Madsen on his lid in an accident that started with Donnie Schatz getting into the wall. The track was either you run the bottom lane or the top lane. There was really not a middle in the track. Madsen running up top, no place to go, got upside down. They took the car to the work area, was on. he started last, and this was, I'm going to say about halfway through the feature on Saturday, and drove from last up to 6th. So just an impressive run for Kerry Madsen there. Another guy that we noted, and these guys are still out on tour, still grinding away, is that Jacob Allen and Logan Schuchart team. Jacob Allen started 22nd on the night place, had passed Donnie Schatz, and ended up falling back to finish 10th, but he got the Hard Charger Award after starting 22nd. So been a tough run for Jacob Allen and Logan Schuchart, but we were really impressed with his Hard Charger run the other night, and those guys are really good on the bullring tracks, and I-55 is just a little, it's not like your Knoxville or even your Williams Grove, so good run for those guys. Bulls that we looked at over the weekend, Cody Dara had a strong 5th place finish on Friday night. Unfortunately, he ended up backing that up with a 24th place finish on Saturday night, so they're still grinding away as well. But picking up the win on Saturday night was Sammy Swindell, and here's an impressive stat for you. Over 290 feature wins for Sammy Swindell, but here's the great stat. 33 out of 37 seasons Sammy Swindell has been running with the Outlaws. He's picked up at least one feature win each of those 33 seasons.
Big numbers, and do you expect anything less from one of the all-time greatest that the World of Outlaws SDP Sprint Cars has ever seen? There's Steven with the stat of the night, but Stat Boy's going to come to the rescue because I mentioned Joey Saldana and his qualifying prowess earlier, and Steven, I'm going to rescue you with the stat book here because even I was wrong on this one. Joey Saldana with the quick time on Saturday night at the Spring Classic. 10 quick times out of 18 races so far in 2014. Tom, I want to hear your thoughts on Saldana.
Are you kidding me?
Oh, come on. You don't get off the hook that easy.
Myself.
Especially when you consider the fact that the next closest guy with quick times has 3. That's Paul McMahon.
Yeah, really, what can you say? I think that the performance speaks for itself.
I'll give you that one. I didn't want to let you off the hook that easy, but gosh.
Well, there's only so much you can say. Spectacular, unbelievable, incredible, out of his mind. But I got to tell you, haven't we kind of come to expect that from him lately?
Valid point. Steven, I'll turn back to you for a second. Joey Saldana was good in Darren Pittman's number 9 car, but he never won a championship. Darren Pittman comes to the number 9 car, and he wins a championship. Is this the year that we see Joey Saldana, after he has left the best team he's ever driven for, in his words, and end up winning a championship?
Well, I think he certainly could do it. He's certainly shown so far this season that if you're going to win the championship, you got to go through him. I just think it's one of those things where even though you might be with the best team, maybe the situation just never works itself out so that you were able to close the deal. And let's not forget the fact that he was going against a guy who's just gone crazy the last 10 years or so on tour in Donnie Schatz. It's one of those things that whether it was chemistry, whether it was maybe the relationship just got stale. Certainly throw in he had some bad injuries there as well. But boy, this 71M team has really turned it on. He's gonna be one to contend for the title. He's up 14 points on Pittman right now. If you're going to ask me to make a prediction of what's going to happen the rest of the season, I might have to lean toward Pittman because I just feel like that team over the long haul has what it. But if he keeps winning these quick times like he has, he's going to be right there with them.
And he may win it the same way that his former teammate Darren Pittman won it.
Oh, absolutely.
of really strong qualifying efforts. So, Steve, headed to this weekend for the first time this season, the Outlaws head to Eldora. What do we expect there?
Well, yeah, they are headed out to Tony Stewart's Eldora Speedway, and I think this season has really shown us that it is really hard to predict what's going to happen. Any Eldora race is going to be really exciting. Going to be some great racing there. You're going to be... I feel like Eldora at times is almost that Darlington of the World of Outlaw sprint cars. You're almost playing peekaboo with the wall if that's the line that you're choosing to run, and usually that's the one that they do to keep their momentum up on the top side. So we'll see. I don't even know if I could make a prediction headed to Eldora.
Okay, fine. I'll let you off the hook. I won't make you make one. Even though I really wanted to. I'm going to go with Donnie Schatz. That's just me. But we'll see what happens. I know Larry Bowes and the staff up there gearing up for an exciting show this weekend at Eldora. Tom, as we get set to close this show, I do want to hit on some asphalt racing real quick. Still sprint cars, because we can't leave the down and dirty segment talking about something other than sprint cars. We just might not be quite as dirty as on dirt. But want to give a shout out to Johnny Bridges from Friday night at the Anderson Motor Speedway in South Carolina, and Morgan Turpin, the female phenom, on Saturday night at Southern National Motorsports Park, picking up wins for the United Sprint Car Series at their return to pavement and their beginning on pavement for 2014. Bridges, who got beat by Turpin on Saturday night, wins in his last 3 starts. Oh, by the way, the only one that he didn't win, he finished second.
Yeah, Johnny Bridges, he's one of those drivers, he talks a good game about, his situation, and, makes everybody think, well, we're struggling just to get to the racetrack. No, he just goes out, pushes the gas down, and stomps on everybody. Well, Morgan Turpin also is a driver who's more than capable of pushing the gas, and she really, it's so cool to see her having the success that she's having, and she was fast here when they were here a couple of weeks ago but to see her go do what she did really both days, honestly, on the pavement is pretty darn cool.
Yeah, it was real. Finished second on Friday night, won the race Saturday night. It kills me. I wasn't there for the race on Saturday that she won, and she's been ribbing me about it the last 48 hours, complaining that I wasn't the win of the season. Well, you know what, Morgan? I'll be there for the next one. Mark my words about that one. So I hope she keeps the performance up, because that's going to be fun to watch her the rest of the year. Kyle, before we close out tonight's show, it's been fun. Definitely enjoy it as always, and looking forward to another exciting show on Thursday.
Yeah, Jacob, I'm really looking forward to it. We will continue to recap what happened at Stafford this past weekend with the Sizzler. We'll continue to look forward to Seacock's opening show this weekend with the Valenti Modified Racing Series. We'll put some other things in perspective for everybody. All this coming Thursday night on the Stock Car Shield Show. And right back here next week, find out who won the Valenti race at Seacock, the opener.
It's going to be fun. It's going to be fast. It's Thursday night for the Soccer Steel SRI Motorsports Show on Speed77 Radio and Race Chaser Online. That's at 7 p.m. Eastern. We will have a myriad of guests. Bobby Santos. We'll have Ronnie Bassett. We'll have Rhodes. Hopefully we'll have Paul Custer working on getting all that lined up for Thursday night's show. But for now, we're done here on the Madness, and a very expanded edition tonight for everybody here at Speed77 Radio and Race Chaser Online. Tom Baker, Kyle Souza, Joel Sebastianelli, Stephen Ovens, Clint Miller, everybody that makes it happen behind the mics and behind the glass. I'm Jacob Seelman, reminding all you race fans to check us out on RaceChaserOnline.com or search us on Facebook at Speed77 Radio or Race Chaser Online that's at Speed77 Radio at Race Chaser News. Appreciate everybody tuning in tonight, and until Thursday when we're back for the Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports Show, keep it off the wall Until we meet again, and wherever you may be, we'll see you at the racetrack. Have a good night, everybody. So long!